Welcome to the Dynon channel, your video source for information, education, and training on Dynon Avionics' industry-leading line of integrated avionics for experimental amateur-built and light sport aircraft. Today's topic, Skyview System, displaying SixPack style flight instruments.
In today's video, I'd like to demonstrate a feature that I'm frequently asked about by pilots new to the Skyview system or those pilots considering purchasing Skyview for their airplane, and that is, can the current flight display be changed to present the flight instruments in a traditional six-pack layout? And the answer is yes, you can do that. Let me show you how. Now, first of all, the primary flight display, PFD, has its own associated submenu, and that button is here on button 1 on Skyview's main menu, of course labeled PFD. So I'll select that now, and here we see the submenu associated with the primary flight display. I've covered some of these topics in prior videos. My focus today is to show you how to change the mode, the display mode for the flight instruments, and that is accessed under button 3 labeled Mode. So I'll press that now. Here we are looking at the mode submenu for the primary flight display. First of all, I'll point out there are two gray buttons. You've heard me say this in prior videos, but throughout the Skyview system, if a menu button is colored gray, that denotes an on-off feature, and gray is the on condition. So we know when we see a gray button that is a feature that can be turned on and off. By way of demonstration, notice button 2 labeled SynVis. That refers to the synthetic vision or computer-generated terrain in the background of the primary flight display. And since that button is gray, you know that I can turn that off. I'll do that now. Pressing button 2, the button turns black, and the synthetic terrain is gone from the primary flight display. So you can see that's an on-off feature. My advice to you is don't do that. I can't think of a good reason to remove the synthetic vision from your primary flight display, so please turn that back on, and if you find it intimidating, I encourage you to fly with it for a short time, and you'll find you'll quickly get used to it, and it's a great resource in the cockpit. Now, switching our focus all the way over to the right to button 7 labeled EFIS, that's the other feature that's currently turned on. EFIS is the universal acronym for Electronic Flight Information System, and we use that in the Skyview system to refer to the electronic tape display for flight instruments. But notice next to it there's another option, currently black. It's labeled six-pack. You can already suspect that's what you're looking for, right? So let's press that now and see what happens. As I press button 6, labeled six-pack, couple things happen. Right off the bat, our flight instruments changed, and there's your trusty, familiar six-pack display. Notice when I press button 6, that menu option turned gray, denoting that the six-pack feature is turned on, and at the same time, button 7, labeled EFIS, turned off. So you can see that those two buttons function essentially as a toggle switch. You toggle on either the EFIS display or the six-pack. And let me toggle that for you so you can see again how easy it is to change. Pressing button 7, there we are, we're back to the EFIS display. Going back to the six-pack, it's easy as pushing that one button. So here we have the trusty six-pack, and these should look familiar to you. Of course, you have airspeed on the left, attitude indicator in the middle, altimeter on the right, and on the lower row, turn coordinator, directional gyro, and vertical speed indicator. Now, they may seem somewhat small to you, but we've made them as large as possible in the space allocated. Currently, I have my display split 50-50 between flight instruments and moving map. What happens if I reconfigure the display? Hopefully you've learned about changing the screen layout in one of my prior videos, but I'm going to do that now. I need to go back to Skyview's main menu, pressing button 1 once, and again. Here we are back to the main menu. I'm going to select button 7 for screen, and I'm going to change my layout. I'm going to start by removing the map so that my flight instruments occupy the whole display. Now that should look very comfortable to those of you that are hankering for these old round dial instruments. They simply fill the screen. Again, you still have the synthetic terrain in the background, which is a very useful thing. For those of you contemplating how to use the six-pack on your first flight or during your phase 1 flight testing, that's a time when, in fact, you may want to remove the synthetic vision. Hopefully, you're just going to be orbiting over the airport or very near, and having that synthetic vision in the background may not be as big a factor for you then. So let me go back to the PFD menu and I'll show you what this large scale 6-pack looks like with no synthetic vision. So I'm on the primary flight display menu, press button 3 mode, and again here we have button 2 is labeled SynVis. I'll turn that off, and that's as simple as you get. There is your basic unencumbered 6-pack flight instrument display. Now again, pushing button 7 to switch back to the EFIS display. We've switched back to that tape display, no synthetic vision. Let me switch back to the 6-pack again. Now let me restore synthetic vision in the background. I hope that you will follow this progression as you learn to get comfortable with your SkyView system. Again, if you need to start with a 6-pack because that's what's most familiar to you, you would start here, no synthetic vision, just a full-scale 6-pack. Your next step in transitioning to make the best use of this EFIS system is to turn on that synthetic vision, and then the final step, of course, will be to switch yourself to the tape instruments. Now, I'm not one to tell you that the tape presentation for airspeed and altimeter and vertical speed is inherently better than round dial instruments. However, I will point out that both displays, EFIS and 6-pack, both displays present both digital and analog information. The primary difference between the two is that in the round dial display, the needle itself is what moves, and the scale is stationary behind the needle. And that's what we're most familiar with, those of us that learn to fly on round dials. On the tape presentation, here I'll select the EFIS display again. On the tape presentation, we still see both digital values in the black box in the middle of each tape and an analog presentation, and that is the black box serves as the pointer. The tape moves behind the pointer. So it's the scale that moves rather than the pointer itself. But with that exception set aside, both instrument presentations still give you the same information. What is unique about the tape display or the EFIS display is your instrument scan. Because the instruments are arrayed essentially in a U shape, you tend to look through the middle of the flight instruments, especially when you're using synthetic vision in the background. It functions in some ways almost like a heads-up display. Your head is looking at this display instead of out the window, but your instrument scan is much more similar to what you might experience if you've ever used a heads-up display. And for that reason, I find that in the long term, the tape presentation or the EFIS display actually is more useful once you get acclimated to it. If I switch back for a moment to the 6-pack display, you'll see because the instruments are in the traditional 2-row layout, they tend to appear in the forefront, and your eyes have a more challenging time focusing on the synthetic terrain in the background. Now, continuing on my demonstration about how the 6-pack is laid out, here we're looking at a 100% primary flight display. I'm going to switch back now to the screen layout menu and return the map to the display by pressing here, in this case, button 5, map page. Here we're back where I started earlier, and that is 50% flight instruments, 50% map, and notice that the 6-pack is still in the traditional layout, but the instruments are a fair bit smaller. Now, some of you, especially if you have a single SkyView display in your airplane, you may frequently fly with the engine page also displayed. Let me do that now. Notice, in this case, with the engine added to the display, the flight instruments only have the option of occupying 40% of the screen width. In this case, we have chosen to arrange the flight instruments in a somewhat chevron-shaped pattern, and that is because if we were to make the instruments small enough to be presented in 2 horizontal rows, you would find that the instruments themselves simply become too small to be easily legible. So that's why we went to this chevron layout when you have all 3 screen pages displayed at the same time. So that's really a quick overview of the 6-pack presentation. Again, I know lots of you are saying, oh, those are familiar and comfortable, and that's definitely what I want to use. I hope you will give some thought to transitioning towards the EFIS display in the long term because, again, there are many safety features that are more accessible when you're looking at the tape instruments. For now, I thank you for joining me and tune in for more videos. Thanks for watching.
For more information on planning or capabilities of the Skyview system, please see our website at dynonavionics.com, where you can find links to our system installation guides, pilot user guides, and other valuable information like our user forum. Thank you for watching the Dynon channel.